This is just an opportunity to get a glimpse of Ian in the natural habitat of Waterloo, and a beautiful day here, beautiful fall day on September the 30th, 2019. So Ian, thanks again for being here for the interview.
My pleasure.
My name is Dave Mitchell, and I'm joined this morning by Ian McGee, who's a member and elder at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church in Kitchener, Ontario. And we're following a tradition started by Ab Martin some time ago, where Ab was interviewing people from the congregation and just finding a bit about their lives. And so this morning, I'm talking with Ian, and we'll find out some things about his past. And I know it's a very interesting past. I know this from personal experience, and I'll explain as we go. So Ian, welcome, and let me start with this, your birthday.
My birthday is November the 9th, every year.
Okay.
1937 was the first one.
All right, very good. And where were you born?
I was born in Toronto.
Now that's very interesting because I, for some reason, assumed you were born in the United States. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why. But this goes back to university days when you were one of my professors, and that was a little more than 50 years ago, if you can believe that. Okay, so maybe it's because of your schooling in the States. So Let me ask then, how many schools did you attend?
In total, I was at 6 different schools, 3 in Canada and 3 in the U.S. My first school was public school, John English Public School in Mimico, Ontario. Went to the high school, Mimico High School, which have since been absorbed in Etobicoke, I believe, and Mimico doesn't have a name anymore. Then I went to the University of Toronto and got a degree in engineering physics. I went to University of Waterloo in 1960 in its fledgling years, taking courses in with a master's degree in science, Master of Science. Then I went to Yale University in the United States for 4 years to get a PhD in theoretical physics, and then finally to a University of Wisconsin and a postdoctoral degree for 2 years. And that would bring us to 1967, and then I was indicated to come back to the University of Waterloo and finished my formal education really at the age of 28.
So let me ask, once you had finished your PhD at Yale, then what postdoctoral studies were you looking at the University of Wisconsin?
Theoretical physics. I was following my PhD supervisor who went there and suggested I come with him.
Now that's interesting because I knew you as a professor in the math faculty, math and computer science at University of Waterloo, and you were my professor in the computer science course where we were learning Fortran 4 with what for?
Yeah.
And or was there a Fortran 5 as well with what
Eventually,
for?
yes.
Eventually, okay. So how did you end up in the math faculty then?
Well, clearly they just enjoyed a big expansion from being a mathematics department to a mathematics faculty, one of the first in the world, really, combined of 5 different kinds of mathematics. And I was hired because of the availability of applied mathematics. And, of course, you know about the other 4 possibilities. But I was, naturally in physics you lose a lot of mathematics, and it was a natural fit. And I was focusing on the applied version of mathematics, taking practical ideas for both mathematics and engineering students, who I spent a lot of time teaching as well.
Yeah, great. Well, that makes sense that I would have had you as a professor because I was in the applied mathematics end of things, and even back then I had wanted to be a math teacher. And I've got to tell you, you did a great job. I learned a lot about programming in that course, and that was in the days of the punch cards and having to punch all the code on the cards and all that stuff.
Oh, my goodness.
And so, that was quite an interesting time. Did you have some involvement in writing a textbook?
That's true. The the powers that be in the math faculty arranged for people with very particular parts in the math faculty to write a better book on calculus,
Right.
as I recall.
Yeah.
And there was 19 of us in this venture,
Yeah.
and so I was the beneficiary of 1/19 of the royalties we received.
Very good, very good. You taught me calculus at one point. So you taught calculus and computer science?
Yes, but very briefly on the computer science component, mostly applied math courses.
Yeah, but you do remember teaching.
Oh, indeed.
Teaching it at some point.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And later on in the 1980s, when personal computers became available, and my son Evan was very interested, even as a very young boy.
Oh my.
And I looked at BASIC and I thought, this is Fortran with a few changes. And I thought, okay, I remember what I learned from Professor McGee back in university. This is going to be not too bad. So your formal education ended at age 28, and
Right.
was it about that age you were when you started teaching?
Indeed, I was talking to my colleague Don Cowan, who was at the University of Waterloo. We were there in 1960 together, and he said, "How would you like to come to the math faculty?" And after minimal thought, I thought it's a great idea, moving back to Canada.
Sure.
And even though 2 of our 3 children are born in the United States, it was and we were potentially settled to be there, but the call of Waterloo came.
Oh, terrific. Well, so I would have been about 18. So you were a professor of students who were basically 10 years younger. So it wasn't a huge age gap.
Oh, that was quite normal, actually,
yes.
at the faculty.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So during that process, going right back to the beginning of your education, any special teachers that you remember?
I do recall a couple. Initially, I was told I was not a good student, and even my father and mother heard from the principal saying that it's going to be difficult for Ian to reach grade 8. But something happened in grade 6, and Mr. Mose, who, in his way of teaching mathematics, put it in form of a puzzle. It was called arithmetic then, but I enjoyed puzzles, and that was the key to turn my around.
Isn't
And
that something?
by grade 8, I was doing okay and ready for grade 9. Grade 10, a teacher, and I guess grade 10, they taught me how to solve 2 equations and 2 unknowns. I thought, whoa, I could always solve. Basic equations were easy, one unknown, but this lady knew to do that. And then this was reinforced in grade 12 by a final teacher. Actually, I guess that was grade 13, Mr. Fennell. He looked beyond stuff in mathematics at the high school level, exponentials and things. So
terrific.
I was on my way.
So those 3 in particular turned things around for you. That's wonderful to hear. Well, Einstein got off to a slow start.
You have a way of comforting people.
Any other memorable times at school that you remember?
Well, I was a renegade apparently, and I remember getting the strap, not alone. There was other people got the strap by the teacher. That was their way of taking care of boys that were misbehaving. And the strange thing about that one was our teacher was a veteran of the war, only had one arm, so that gave him extra strength. And I remember holding back the tears.
Yeah. A couple questions here. Your job history, going from your first job and ahead, just what happened there?
Well, I guess it started maybe at the university level, probably no high school, but many summer jobs locally in Mimico, construction, driver, assistant cook, on a railway gang in Saskatchewan. That was interesting. There was no local jobs, but I could be a sous chef in a railway gang, which was interesting, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, prepare for 50 people going out to fix a railway. And then when I was further along in university, I got a job at the nuclear plant in Chalk River.
Wow.
And again, doing mathematically stuff, and similarly a summer job in the Defense Research Station in Valcartier, Quebec. So we're doing some mathematics and French, of course. Then,
Les mathématiques.
yeah. And then when when I was at Yale University, I took a summer job at the research station in Brookhaven National Laboratory in Long Island, New York, and that was very parallel the sort of reach that I was training at the University of Yale University at the same time. So my supervisor on my attaining the degree suggested I come with him to Wisconsin, and I joined him for 2 years, and one of our daughters was born in New Haven, Connecticut, and the second one was born in Madison, Wisconsin, second girl.
Nice.
So I finally ended up with as a professor at the University of Waterloo for 30 years before retirement.
30 years. You mentioned you just got a call to join the math faculty, and it looked like a great opportunity. Yeah, terrific.
Mm-hmm.
So,
of course, you start as an assistant professor. I didn't. Okay, and then work up your.
Right. Well, I would think it's a very enjoyable career, and mathematics is such a great subject to teach. I think, having taught it myself at the high school level. No, it's great. So, your family history. Any siblings?
Yes, I have. I'm the eldest of 4 children. My brother came next, my brother Bob, and I have 2 sisters, Heather and Janet.
Good, terrific. And are they all living in Canada?
Yes, they are all living in Canada. Yeah, that's right.
Do you remember having to make any sacrifices growing up?
Yes, I don't recall everywhere. Not that I had a straight line to things, but there was no major sacrifices except recognizing that money was always tight, and I had trouble getting to pay the tuition by the time I was in the 4th year at university. Didn't have enough money, but after that I was able to get scholarships, and I was home free from then. That's the only sacrifice. It wasn't serious at all.
Right. Relative to income, the tuition was very affordable, whereas now, relative to what a student can earn in the summer, it's much more expensive. Anyway, just the way it is.
That is, yeah.
So, any other thoughts about family life growing up?
Well, I lived and was raised in Mimico, which, again, going to University of Toronto meant expenses getting there, actually, when you think about it.
Right.
But my parents moved to Mimico, a suburb of Toronto, a year after I was born. And along with my sisters and brother, we were raised and schooled in Mimico. What was interesting was that we lived next door to a small bungalow, and an identical home of our aunt and uncle was next door. And these 2 bungalows were structurally mirror imaged, so that we had the major side door looking at each other, literally, a little porch, and it was attached by an 8-foot stoop. We called it a stoop, where we could almost jump from one house to the other. We didn't, but... And the other interesting thing is this uncle was a twin of my father, and my father married this my aunt. It was a sister of my mother, so it was brothers marrying sisters, and they had a joint wedding, I'm told, and so on.
Interesting.
It is. Yeah. I have cousins who are sort of double cousins.
Yes.
Anyway, my sisters and brothers and I keep in touch with regularly. My sister Janet and I are still in Kitchener-Waterloo and maintain our Presbyterian Church affiliation, and my brother, who lives in London, is a Lutheran now, London, Ontario, and Heather, our daughter, lives in North Carolina and is a Baptist. In fact, married to a Baptist minister.
Oh, interesting.
In Boone, North Carolina.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So when you visit down there, do you get to go to church there?
Oh, of course. Yes, of course. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, that must be an interesting experience.
Yep.
How did you meet Donna?
Well, as I cannot recall, we always knew each other in public school, grade whatever, and beyond, because we lived within half a block of each other. So I saw her every school I was in, public school, high school, and when I went to university, she went to nursing in Toronto Western. And so our first date was possibly in high school, but for a dance, and I knew this person forever.
Yes,
it's like my sister.
Sure. Yeah, terrific.
And there was no surprises about knowing the family too, and her sisters knew my brothers and sisters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
She has two sisters, and
Okay.
so it was just not a natural, but I think because of my interest in mathematics, my father said it was. I don't think I knew the difference between boys and girls. Still, I was more mature.
Well, so possibly you went to a dance together in high school, and
Possibly, yeah.
There were
But there are other times where
sure, lots of dances in those days at high schools with live bands quite often. Doesn't happen
Indeed,
anymore.
in
Now it's
fact.
all recorded music and high school dances, but back then,
come to think of it, I did play the trombone
Oh.
in a small band for the from the high school at a couple of dances.
Oh,
Didn't have any particular talent there, but
Yeah,
that was my
terrific. Yeah, good.
my instrument.
Okay, and what year did you get married?
We got married in 1962, and still married.
Yes, and children and
We
grandchildren.
have 3 daughters and 6 grandchildren, made up of 2 girls and 4 boys.
And the range of ages in the grandchildren, what would that be from to?
The 6 grandchildren range in age from now 14 to 24,
14.
approximately,
Oh,
ballpark.
Well,
yeah.
that's an interesting age.
The children live in either Calgary
Oh, okay.
or Orlando, Florida,
Okay.
or Huntsville, Ontario.
Oh, so
Yeah.
quite spread out. And do you communicate using Skype a lot? Do you
Yes.
chat with them on
Yes.
Skype? Well,
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
a
yeah.
great thing. Or if they have Macs, I know you have a Mac. Do you use FaceTime at all?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
FaceTime
yeah,
is good.
yeah.
That's good. Now, I know you joined St. Andrews in 1967, and that makes sense. You came back here.
That's right.
But how did you end up specifically at St. Andrews?
I think Reverend Finn Stewart might have been a reason. He had a reputation, and I think when I had some time as a graduate student in the University of Waterloo, I thought I would take the bus down to a church, and that one, Finn Stewart was very good. Just on the one time I did visit on a Sunday, and at the back of the church there's a little envelope where you can pick up a note and say, yes, I would like to visit, or consider coming to church. And at the time I was in the university physics building, the only one of 2 buildings there, in the upstairs basement. Upstairs of it there was a room for 6 graduate students, and that's where I was doing my study on a midweek, 10 o'clock. I got a visit from a Chester Lewis, I think his last name was.
I remember him very well.
And Chester showed up with the security man and found out that I was following up a guy. Must have said I was at the University of Waterloo, and he went and found me late at night, and it was just Mr. Cook, the security guy for the whole university, 2 buildings, and a dog, a big dog.
Yeah.
And so I get to meet Chester, and I thought, there's got to be some sort of goodness in a church like that. It would take the trouble to sniff out a potential student.
That's something. I remember him very well, Reverend Chester Lewis, because he was my communicant class teacher.
Okay.
Yeah, way back then, and that would have been, isn't that something? So
well,
that's great. And you've been involved in so many things. Would you just outline what your involvement has been with St. Andrews?
Sure. Well, my wife and I became elders in 1992, and then I was, even before that, a member of a board of managers. And about 99, I think I became assistant clerk of session for 2-3-year stints, and then Donna and I became Stephen ministers over that in 1993-94, and I'm still active there. We start with the Visitor and Parish program over here for over 15 years now, called the Friendly Visitors, and currently I'm on the property committee. So I guess the other thing was in 1996, in its infancy, with websites. I initiated the St. Andrew's Church website.
Terrific.
And continued for about 10 years, and now it's taken over by a lot of other people, as I recall. Yeah.
Well, you know what's interesting about that is, to me, is I remember Reverend Stewart, Finley Stewart.
Oh, yeah.
He would often say, if you want this church experience to be meaningful, you need to be involved. And you've certainly followed through on what he was advocating there, and so good for you. I mean, people know and admire you and Donna, for all the things that you've done and continue to do. It really is an inspiration. Now, Pastoral Care, you got interested to explain how that took place.
Yeah, well, as you know, there was a sort of slightly downtime church in our church in the, I think, 1926 or something, where Reverend Tozer came in,
right.
And with taking the place of 3 previous ministers, it was a bad job for him. And so I was asked to help in the pastoral care visitation of members in hospitals and nursing homes. And I continued this role since then. The advantage, of course, was that I got to park easily at the hospitals, which is quite honestly about that. I do, together, Donna and I do a lot of that even now. And we deliver orders of service to our churches, at currently only about 20, to homebound church members prior to each television Sunday.
Terrific.
So that makes sense. There are people sent out to go to those many as we can, and we provide serving the elements to people on TV after a prior arrangement, and serve it in concert with what they are watching in that TV service. So that's working falteringly, but it's working. Pretty good. That
Changing the topic, hobbies that you've had over time.
I don't recall anything special. If sports is a hobby, then yes, I do play a lot of sports.
Well, you were especially good at racquetball.
Yeah, squash.
Oh, was it squash?
Squash,
okay.
Squash. Yes, I was provincially ranked at one point when I was 40, but it took its toll on my body because now I have 3 hip replacements. With only 2 legs, you can do the math to see that one is done twice, and a hip replacement and
that is an interesting concept.
Knowing what I know now about what would happen, I still would do it. It was a great sport.
Well, I remember you had a tremendous reputation as a great squash player, and the squash courts. There's squash courts in the phys ed complex at University of Waterloo.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
and
right.
I think I played a little bit of squash. I was never in your league, but I remember you and I think at some point we're going to play a game together, and for some reason I don't know that we ever did, and we just some things got in the way. One of those things where things got in the way. But no, that's good. So, if you were to describe yourself as being proud of something or things in your life, what would that be?
Well, after thinking about this, I would say my 3 children and wife. And then the wife trained me. I think that probably would be proud of them, because they all have successful careers and lives.
Yeah.
And I was one of 3 people who received a Distinguished Teaching Award at the University of Waterloo in 1991. I was very proud of that. And I was one of the 12 recipients of the Ontario Medal for Good Citizenship for Hospice Work in 2008. And I continue to do hospice works on a daily basis. And I also received a June Colward Award, which is a Circle of Outstanding Hospice Volunteering in 2017.
Well done. I think people have great respect and admiration, and are very thankful to you and Donna for all that you've done in that regard. Traveling that you've done over the years.
Oh, I've traveled lots. I've been to all the provinces and all but 4 of the states in the U.S., the southern states.
Okay.
New Mexico and Alabama, Arkansas, and Mississippi.
Okay.
But with the sabbaticals and stuff like that, I've been able to travel over 4 countries and all the continents. And
40 countries.
40, maybe up to 50 actually. Having a son-in-law who is a naturalist, so he and I have been to Madagascar and off the wall.
Yeah.
And he's been to Antarctica 3-4 times.
But you went too.
Oh yeah, I was there. Oh yeah. Little penguins, and it's a trip of a lifetime. It takes 2 days in a ship to get there, and once you get there, then there's land, and if the weather's good, it gets up to -5 or -10, and sun shines. We had a good time there. Yeah. And so on one of my sabbaticals, I spent a year in Australia with a family of 3 children, and 1.5 years in Newcastle for 6 months, and Canberra in the capital for the other years. And then coming back from Australia, we thought, well, we'll never get to that neck of the woods, so we traveled back to Perth, Australia, which is taking the Indian Pacific Railway from Sydney to Australia. That's take 2 days.
Wow.
And then boarded a plane to Kenya, instead in Mauritius for 4 days, the island, and then another 4 days in Kenya and Nairobi, actually, and then came home on Christmas, 23rd of...
And now, did you get a lot of pictures?
Oh, yes.
And a lot of them would be film or slides?
A lot of pictures. I don't recall having a video clip at that point.
It might have been too early.
Subsequent travels, we use it a lot.
But pictures, and were you able to catalog them in any way? I mean, are they preserved?
Yes. But nowadays we don't tend to look at them very much. But when we think things on TV, say about all the parts of Greece we were at, or in Italy, or in Jerusalem we went to, or in Egypt to see the Sphinx and things like that.
Sure. But you've got all those pictures still.
I think we have some. Sure.
Well, now with digital photography, it's even easier, and then you can easily go from those digital formats, as you know, to put them together in a
and of course,
video.
Because I visit many nursing homes, I often bring my video clip of the latest trip to whatever.
Terrific. So you obviously know a little bit about video editing. And that
a little
sort of
bit,
thing.
yes.
Yeah.
There was a time. It's not the center of my life anymore, but I certainly did be able to talk to Probus Club on my trip to Antarctica, for example, and things like that, because it's rare.
Yeah, terrific. Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, it is wonderful to have had an opportunity to look around the world like that and just see. I think for me, I know my wife Heather and I have done a lot of traveling, and when you see the rest of the world, there's some very interesting parts, and you enjoy it, and then you come back here and you also realize how fortunate we are here.
You're so right. You're so right.
It really is amazing. I mean, we've won the lottery of location.
I dare say, well said. My goodness, Kitchener-Waterloo is.
Yeah,
it's just wonderful. I love it.
A free country where things seem to make sense. People, by and large, treat each other with respect. We can have a reasonable political discourse. All those things are. We have the health care. We're lucky. It's a wonderful country. I'm very thankful for it. I know you are too. Any other facts of interest you would like to tell us about?
I think we've covered most of the things. Donna is also heavily involved in the activities of the church, looking after the office volunteers in the church office. And as I mentioned before, I've been a hospice volunteer for many years, and 15 years volunteering at Freeport Hospital. And again, that's just palliative care, being people near the end of their journey.
Right.
And more recently, my sister Janet and I are at Freeport once a week, dressed as clowns. And
you have great clown outfits.
Yes, that's right. We were blessed with.
And that you enjoy that, obviously.
Yeah, that and twice a week I'm involved with dealing with community Alzheimer's programs, both in Sunnyside and home in Kitchener and University Gates in Waterloo, which is a few hours with people with dementia and listening to them and comforting them and thinking about what about the grace of God go I, because I've got incipient forgetfulness right now.
Well, No, I know it's well, good for you.
Vicious disease.
No, you're still involved, and I think that's what makes life interesting and really keeps people going. Just one last thing: if you were to give advice to young people based on your life experience, just one or two things that you might suggest to them. Anything come to mind there? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but it's such a different world now.
Yeah.
But there's some things that probably still very important to for them to remember.
I think it's healthy if you're able to travel and meet other people. And seeing on the positive side of life is essential, in my opinion. Make good use of your retirement years, I might say.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think I can say anything more.
Well, listen, that in itself says a lot right there. So I want to say again to you, and I've told you many times how much I enjoyed your work with teaching me way back in those years that now go back almost 50. Well, they do go back 50 years.
Yeah.
And no, you were memorable. You worked with integrity. You were sincere. You made it interesting for us. We learned. You really did a good job. And what a special privilege for me then to get to know you through the church a little bit later. And have an ongoing relationship there. That's really special. So I want to say thank you for doing this interview today, and thank you also for all the things that you have done and continue to do.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.